All right, good afternoon, YouTube. In today's video, we are going to be going over the 5-3-1 boring but big variation. The reason why I wanted to choose the boring but big variation is because this is a power building channel. So we are in the business of getting stronger, and the size we put on will come from our strength training, and the size we put on will help our strength training. So that is why I decided to do the boring but big variation, just because I know in other variations of 5-3-1, one of the common complaints is that it's basically just a pure strength program, doesn't have enough volume for actual hypertrophy. But so this template was made, and then I'm now going to review it. So let's talk about the good things about 5-3-1. So 5-3-1 is a staple of, like, let's say, programming, lifting, strength training culture. It's very widely popular for a good variety of reasons. Jim Wendler, very smart guy. He wanted to get away from the West Side Barbell style of training, wanted to kind of like go about it on his own. He has written many well-written articles. And he wanted to be a bit more athletic. So with that being said, athleticism is very different from pure strength and as well as bodybuilding training. So that makes it very different, for lack of better words. It makes it hard to say that this would be a good bodybuilding program because the guy who made it was focusing more so on athleticism. And it's not hard to say that it's a full strength program because the guy who wrote it wanted to do more than just strength. Regardless, some good things about 5-3-1 is that it provides you with a training structure that allows for two things: consistency and progression. So a lot of workout programs, like a lot of times when you just scroll on social media and you just find these workouts like, oh, best workout for this, best workout for that, it might give you sets and reps, it might give you like certain exercises and like certain intensity techniques to make the set harder, but generally speaking, it doesn't give you any type of progression. 5-3-1 is good at providing you with a very simple progression. The name of the progression is literally in the name: 5, 3s, and 1. So it's simple, it's easy to follow, anyone can do it. Anyone can walk into the gym, 1 week do 5 reps, the next week do 3 reps, and the next week do 1 rep. And with heavy weights each time. So this is really good for the, let's say, late novice who has been using something like a strong lift starting strength program, and then now they are trying to use really heavy loads. That's why the 3s and 1s are there. And also, there's so many different variations of 5-3-1. 5-3-1 has a lot of different templates out there available for free, and of course there's beyond 5-3-1 and then 5-3-1 forever, so to infinity and beyond, I guess. But anyway, if you can manipulate, modify, and adjust the variety of templates that are out there for 5-3-1, it can provide a good base for a program you make for yourself. But this leads me into the issues I have with 5-3-1. So first of all, you have to manipulate, modify, and justify the template to make it good for you. Individualization is going to be the biggest part of any program that you ever buy, make, find out on the internet. If you just find a free program, you're going to have to adjust it eventually. If you buy a program, like buy a program from a coach, that coach should also tell you, hey, we're going to start out with your program written like this. We're going to test it out. And then you're going to give me some feedback, what you like, what you don't like, how you're recovering from it. And then we personalize it from there. And then boom, you have your program. And then if you just make one for yourself, you know yourself better than anyone else. So you're able to kind of cater to your own needs. So with 5-3-1 being so popular, being so general, having to hit the widest amount of people and just appeal to the largest audience, that is both a strength and a weakness because now the individual is no longer taken into consideration. The next issue that I have with 5-3-1 is that the volume is just really low, and that makes it much better for peaking strength, not building it. So in the original 5-3-1 template, you do 3 sets, or no, you just do a top set of 5, and then you do a top set of 3 and a top set of 1, and they're split out across 3 weeks. So each workout, you have this one hard set. And here's the thing. We would laugh at anyone who told us that after one hard set of training, you are doing more harm than good. You're not going to be able to recover from it. You're overtraining. Like, we think that person is stupid. So it is worth noting that in this training template, you just go to a one hard top set, a fairly heavy one because the most volume you get on strength work is 5 reps. So it's fairly heavy, and then we do back off sets with a bunch of accessories, which kind of varies on the template. So in my opinion, it's not really the best for actually building strength. So That's one thing I would mention there. Now, the next thing is to improve that would be to use training blocks with different amount of reps. So you can still stick to the 5-3-1 template, but one recommendation I would make if you are really interested in just doing 5 threes and ones is just do 3 sets of 5 on week 1, 3 sets of 3 week 2, and then 3 sets of 1 week 3, and then you deload or whatever. Or if you're still a novice, you don't need to deload, and you just repeat that process. In my opinion, that's going to be a bit better just because now you're actually able to handle a bit more weight, you get more comfortable with the reps, you get a little bit more volume, you get more adapted, you get more touches to the bar, you just get, in my opinion, more valuable volume and the development of this skill, because that's something that's really important. Strength training is a skill, so that's why it's really good that you lift heavy, but at the same time, you also need to get a lot of practice in. So that's really good. Now, with the third part that I think is not so good is that not all benefits will.
My apologies.
Shut up, Siri. Okay. So shut up. Sorry. Now, here's the thing. Not all movements benefit from this rep range. So 1 to 5 reps, right? Because you're going from 5 at most to 1. Like for strength movements, not all movements will benefit from this. The bench press and the squat, in my opinion, in my own training, I feel like these movements will bias toward progressing better with volume versus intensity, whereas the deadlift, you should focus more so on intensity rather than volume. Doing too much deadlift volume is kind of like for whatever reason, a lot of novice programs either have you doing too little deadlift volume, or there are programs that just have you doing way too damn much, and you'll soon find that this is a example of doing just too much. So when it comes to your training, when it comes to your programming, I do recommend that in the bench and the squat, you bias more toward volume, whereas in the deadlift, you bias more so towards intensity. So with the bench press, one thing I'm going to recommend, let's say instead of doing 5-3-1, which is kind of like a wave, it's a descending wave or a pyramid, whatever you want to call it. And what I would recommend there instead of 5, 3, and 1 would be 8, 6, and 4. That allows you to start out with a pretty high volume, 3 sets of 8. Then the next week you do 3 sets of 6 with higher loads. You're cutting down the amount of reps you do. And then you bump up the weight again, reps drop again, and you do 3 sets of 4. I think that's a much better way of going about it. With the squat, you can do something like 7, 5, 3. So week 1, 3 sets of 7, or a top set of 7 if you would like to keep that same style of training, up to you. And then you do 3 sets of 5, 3 sets of 3, and then with the deadlift, you still do 5-3-1, but I would recommend you do 2 sets of 5, 3 sets of 3, 3 sets of 1. All right, so that's the third point. Now for the fourth, it biases the main lifts. So with the 5-3-1 template, it is a 4-day split. It's kind of like an upper lower, but when you look at it, it looks more like a bro split, depending on how you actually set it up. And when it comes to the main lifts have progression. They have a clear-cut way where you can see from point A to point B you are going to increase in some manner. Whether in your program you should be able to mathematically see volume is increasing or intensity is increasing. You need to be able to see that in your program, and that happens here, but it only happens on the main lift, which I think is a huge disservice to every other muscle and every other movement you're trying to train. So when it comes to your accessories, when it comes to your accessory movements, they deserve the same amount of intensity progression and intention behind the main lift. And another thing that's really important to take into consideration is the fact that some people just aren't built for the main barbell movements, the main barbell variation. You might benefit more from inclines, dumbbell pressing, maybe even stiff legs or Romanians. Your body just might be built better for different movements, and then you are going to try to lift so much weight with a variation that might not be friendly to your body. Might just something to think about. And then finally, this is kind of like a build off of the last point, which is volume recommendations lack programming progression that is on the main list. So I just really want to hammer this home, because when it comes to making your own program, putting all your eggs in one basket, putting all your progression on one lift and picking favorites, essentially, like NH would say in his review of this program, when you do that, you really limit your ability to grow anything else, and then that might lead you down the road of overuse injuries, muscle imbalances, who knows, right? So let's continue. So there's 2 examples with this template of 5-3-1 and the boring but big version, and if you look at it, it is very, very minimalistic. So with the day one example for example one, right? It has you do the press for 5 on week 1, then you do a top set of 3 week 2, top set of 1 week 3. And here's my thing: the press can be a great movement for max efforts, but should it be? Now think about the person who is probably going to run 531. They're more likely to be a novice. I know that 531 is not necessarily a novice program, and it's not really a program for strength or size, or quite honestly, at least. I mean, it's used for it, but it's kind of hard to say when it's programmed in the way that it is, that it's for strength or for size. I mean, it definitely looks like a powerlifting program just because it's so minimalistic and you do more sets, less exercises. So it has elements of both. And part of that is because the original 531 template, like I mentioned earlier, was criticized for not having enough volume and doing too much intensity. And now here we are with a version that has too much junk volume, in my opinion. And we'll get into that. So, should the press be a max effort movement? In my opinion, it shouldn't be. What is your goal for the press? Do you want bigger shoulders? I don't see how you can accumulate enough tonnage with heavy singles, you know? Like, is it for strength? Okay, what about for the overhead press? Does these max effort lifting strategy, does it build up your overhead press? I have found my overhead press actually improved much better, like my 1 rep max, my top level strength on the overhead press improved much better when I focus primarily on adding reps over time. So like do maybe 6 to 10, and then once you can do 3 sets of 10, or once you hit a set of 10, then you add some weight and you do that process. That, in my opinion, will build up the press a bit better. So I'm not the biggest fan of using 531 on the press, but there it is. Okay. So sorry, 1 second. All right. Next, and then we have the press for 5 sets of 10. So in the guide that it gave you, it said to use 5 sets of 10 with the 50% of your training max for the day. And then week 2, you do 60%. Week 3, you do 70%. First of all, if you actually tried that, you'd find that you wouldn't be able to do it for 5 sets of 10, because 5 sets of 10 is really not the best range to use most of the time. And then especially for like compound movements, I just would not recommend it. Now, I know that there are modifications that he's recommended and other things, but in the program itself, in the program that is available for everyone to just look at and read, you don't really get that. It's usually someone else in the comments, in the forums, and somewhere else outside of where they are, where whoever is getting this program has that information of, oh, you can just drop down sets or whatever. So it's written as 5 sets of 10. I would not recommend that. Now, the reason why I don't like the 5 sets of 10 is that in this example, it doesn't really progress. It doesn't really address progression. So if you just do a 10% jump each time, so that's a pretty big jump, and you're still expected to do 50 total reps. That's a lot. Now this also is going to be done on it's basically done as a drop set, so you are basically really hammering in that movement pattern, and you're also going to be getting like an interference effect, because you go up to a top heavy set and then you back off and do a bunch of sandbagging with these high reps, with these really light weights. So what kind of signal are you sending to your body? That's something you need to take into account. I'm trying to find other things to say other than consideration. So, and then finally lat work. So with lat work being 5 sets of 10, I'm already see someone doing this for like, you know, lat pull downs or like hammer strength machines, something of that nature, seated cable rows. And I'm not totally against that, because, you know, it's sparing on the low back, but it's worth noting that this is very minimalistic. So it's, in my opinion, like, so let's say you're doing an overhead press, it doesn't tell you what kind of pulling you should do. So I feel like with the press being vertical, you should do a vertical pull. So why not do a, let's say, chin ups and then lat pull downs? So that way you get an intensity movement, because pull ups, chin ups are harder, and then you do lat work to get a bit more volume. I would recommend you do that there instead. So 5 sets of 10 on a machine, like, you know, that's a bit more doable. But if you're doing it on a free weight exercise, like let's say a barbell row, I wouldn't recommend that. Now, one way that you can improve this is to change it into 5 sets of 8 to 12. So part of the reason why I recommend this change is because 5 sets of 8 to 12 allows you to actually push a little bit closer to failure per set. If you have to do 5 sets of 10, you are going to sandbag, because you want to hit 10 on every single set. But if you do a range, so on the first set, on the first 2 sets you hit 12, and then you hit 10 on the third, 9 on the fourth, and 8 on the fifth, good. You're good. You're in the range. You push to failure. You get more effective reps. It's not as junk volumey. Now, other things, like I said, you can like split up between different pulls. So here I would, like I said, do the chin up and the lat pull down, but lat work should be specified and it should be catered to the day as best as possible. I know in my supersets, I've made the recommendation of bench press and pull-ups, but part of that is just because of fatigue management and how my gym is set up. It really just depends on you. Like you can make that adjustment. But anyway, let's go into day 2. So with day 2, the template for every single day is the same, which is one thing I think is totally horrible because 5 sets of 10 on deadlift is just beyond insane to me. You would have to use such a light weight that you're not getting a productive workout, or you're just going to overdo it and you're going to tax your lower, your posterior chain and your low back too much, and that is also an issue. So here, I'm not the biggest fan of this. 50 reps is too much for the deadlift, even on a variation. Like it's, there's just more effective ways to go about this in terms of programming. You can do 3 sets of, I would say 4 to 8 at most. Like for volume, like one thing that I recommend is like 2 sets of 3 to 8 or 3 sets of 3 to 8, like somewhere in that range, you know. And then abs. So abs, I don't think they should be done in like just by themselves. I think when you do abs, it should be part of a superset. So one thing that I really recommend you look into are finishers and conditioning workouts made by Brian Alsruhe. So he is more of a strongman type athlete and coach. So, but I feel like they have a great amount of knowledge and information when it comes to conditioning and core work, especially for strength athletes. So here I would do something like, let's say, a circuit of abs. So you do, let's say you do hanging leg raises, kettlebell swings, and goblet squats, or sled pushes and then leg raises, something of that nature, right? Do something with superset it. Or here would be a great place to include a little bit more isolation exercises because there's so little in the program. It's not that hard to make a giant set with a bunch of, like a bodybuilding giant set. Now with the bench press, a lot of the things that I mentioned, especially on day 1, apply to the rest of the days because they're all the same. Now with something I want to really hammer home to you is just the fact that you are pushing to such a high top hard set, and then you do a bunch of high volume the same day. So you're inducing the interference effect essentially. You're bringing it in, you're inviting it over for dinner to fuck up your training and fuck up your gains. You need to be very mindful about the way you do this. So I'm not the biggest fan of how this is set up. And then lat work, specify horizontal versus vertical. Here it's a bench press day, so probably more horizontal focused. And then day 4, like still the same thing. Like if squats aren't friendly to you, 5 sets of 10 on squats would just be really difficult to do for cardiovascular reasons. And even if the squat is not, like if you're not built to squat, doing that might be very painful for your hips, knees, ankles, or or like even your quads, you know. So maybe do something like leg press and hack squat instead. And then abs, same thing that I had on deadlift day. Just why is it by itself? Superset it with something. Example 2 kind of switches things around a little bit, and I would argue that this is the better version. So example, if you are going to run boring but big, run the second version, but still make all the adjustments I'm going to recommend to you. So at least with this one, you split up the benching, you split up the squatting and the deadlifting, and then you get a little bit more frequency. So that gives you a little bit more practice with the movements. It allows you to distribute the volume a bit more equally, and that means you're able to apply a little bit more effort into each set, and that is a plus. Now, with that being said, squats and deads in the same day is something I'm a fan of, especially for strength training. But I don't like the rep ranges that it's in. I don't think 5 to 10 is good for that. I think an improvement that you can do here is, let's say, 3 to 5 sets for 6 to 10 reps. So let's say week 1, you do 3 sets of 10, week 4, 4 sets of 8, week 5, 5 sets of 6, or week 3, 5 sets of 6. In my opinion, that's a huge improvement. And then another thing that I want you to do is you need to understand that when you do include the squat and deadlift in the same training session, the one that is done second in the workout will be like you're going to enter that movement fatigued, so you won't be able to perform as optimally as you would otherwise. So when you include a supplemental version, it should be a variation and not the actual lift. So if you do, let's say, your deadlift day, Your squat variation should be a pause squat, beltless, close stance, maybe a box squat, maybe a safety bar squat, but something that's not your squat, but will carry over. And same thing applies to the deadlift on your squat day. You can do stiff leg deadlift, maybe Romanian deadlift if you are more like of an ollie lifter or trying to get more size. Other options might be power cleans or speed deadlifts. Those are other options that you can consider when making these improvements. And then abs, same thing I mentioned. Go follow Brian Alsru if you haven't already. Like if you've somehow managed to find my channel before you found his, interesting. But yeah, just he has such great videos on finishers, conditioning, core work for the strength athlete that I think would be very beneficial to put in here, especially because Jim Wendler tried to be as athletically minded as possible when writing these programs. And then, yeah, just one thing that I would recommend too is you can definitely split up like the movements that you do, and like it allows you to add in more exercises because so many muscles are being neglected in this training. If you look at this, there's no bicep work, there's no calves, there's no traps, no no rear delts, no low back, so it's very hard to recommend a program like this. Now, there is on the Lift Vault page where I got this, there are recommended exercises that you can kind of like throw in there, and let's kind of go over those choices. So on squat day, you can throw in chins and dips. I do like the idea of throwing in chins on squat days because, like, you know, I recommend high volume, high frequency back training. So, but dips on a squat day, I think that's kind of interesting, especially when you're following it up with a bench press day. Like it might cause you to, you know, be a little sore, not be able to perform as hard as you would otherwise. So that's something you need to think about. On the bench day, I don't know why barbell rows aren't included. Like barbell rows are a great movement, and you can, like I said, let's say you do, it's 5 sets of 10 of lat work, right? So let's say you do 3 sets, 6 to 8 reps on barbell rows, and then you do 2 sets of 8 to 12 or 12 to 20 on lat pull downs, whatever, and then boom, now you get 2 lat exercises. And I'm talking about example 2, by the way, so now you get to balance out the horizontal push, the vertical push, and now you have a horizontal and vertical pull. That is already like essentially double the amount of work and ways you're hitting the muscles, and that is already a huge improvement over how the program was originally written. Sorry about my fire alarm. Or smoke detector. Let me, like, I wonder how many times that's not gone off and like pissed people off already. Anyway, deadlift, dips, and face pulls, like, whereas like on that day I would do like hamstring curls, back extensions, good mornings, and there's always other rear delt exercises over the face pull. The face pull is not the end all be all of rear delt training, so not the biggest fan there. All right, so let's just go. So this is going to be a summary of how to make this better. So with the 5-3-1 template, I highly recommend that you change the rep ranges for each lift. For the bench and the overhead press, like I said, you do 3 sets of 8, then week 1, 3 sets of 6, week 2, 3 sets of 4, week 3. And then that same process, 7-5-3 for the squat. I think that would be a much better. And then for the deadlift, 2 sets of 5, 3x3, then 3 sets of 1. So in my opinion, this allows you to extend the amount of time you actually build strength because you are building a much wider base because you're accumulating much more volume. The next thing I would recommend is that you provide a progression for the supplemental and accessory movements. So use evolving rep ranges there too. Use step loading, use wave loading. Do something other than just 5 sets of 10 and thinking that's going to be enough. And then also use more exercises. Target the muscles you want to get big. So you need to be able to do bicep work. Bicep, tricep supersets are really easy. So that's really something you can add in like anywhere really. So yeah, I would take example 2. Add in a bicep tricep superset, mix, let's say combine abs and traps or calves, and then go from there. Like, as it is written, I do not like this program. And I highly recommend against using it. But like I said, it's a good base for you to build off of, modify, manipulate, and make it for you. So that's it for this video. Once again, I apologize for the fire alarm. So hopefully, or the smoke detector. So hopefully that didn't bother you too much. Yeah, besides that, please like, comment, subscribe if you have any questions or any other programs you want me to review, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.